Welcome back, fellow adventurers, to another episode of the Corner of Story and Game. Today we're diving back into the lenses from the art of game design with our guest, Stephen Perro. Stephen wears many hats, serving as the technical narrative lead at Small Lone Studios, as well as a writer and senior editor at Industry Intelligence, Inc. Specifically, this episode is going to examine the lenses of friendship, expression, community, and griefing, all of which can be applied to the general concept of building communities and competition in games. Stephen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Gerald. Happy to be here.
I am excited to talk with you today about 4 more of the lenses from Jesse Schell's The Art of Game Design, 4 lenses that we have picked around community, the lens of friendship, the lens of expression, the lens of community, and the lens of griefing. So we can kind of look at the whole thing from different angles and all really revolving around community. Before we dig into the lenses, though, I want to find out more about Stephen. Give me your origin story. How did you fall in love with writing, gaming? How did you get into it? What are you up to these days?
I've been playing games forever, since I was old enough to hold a Game Boy, pretty much. It's always been my dream to work in the industry, but I never really knew in what capacity for a long time. In college, I kind of fell in love with languages and literature. So I got a creative writing degree and a Japanese language and lit degree. And I studied abroad in Japan for a little bit. I sort of hoped that would be enough to get a junior job somewhere in a studio, but it took me a little too long to realize that's not really how it works. So then I started looking for a more structured approach. And that's what landed me at the narrative department, which gave me the opportunity to meet you, and got me to start making games. As for what I've been up to lately, I'm a lead now at this volunteer studio called Small Lone, which is made of some of the people from the narrative department. It's just grown and ballooned since then. There's 100 members now in our little community, and we're working on this new big spooky ghost project that's right up my alley. It's gonna be way more ambitious than anything we've done before, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also on staff at the narrative department. I monitor the Discord there, and recently at GDC I arranged a bunch of big narrative meetups for them. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Wow, that's really cool, man. Small Lone Studio stuff is really neat. You guys have put out a couple really fun titles, and I've had people on the show from there, so cool stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really great. It's just a bunch of passionate people getting together, being all right, we got to make something. So no, I wish I could share all of the stuff that we're talking about for this next project. I'm so psyched about it.
All right, let's dig into the lenses, my friend.
Yeah, of course.
So we're going to start off with the lens of friendship. So, in your opinion, as a designer or a writer, game lover, game creator, how does fostering friendships amongst players contribute to an overall gaming experience? Kind of just start broad here.
Yeah, I mean, friendship is a really powerful thing when it comes to games. It manifests in so many different ways. For example, I can't tell you how many games I've played just because somebody else is playing it or they recommended it to me. It's still a really powerful way to get exposed to new games or genres that you've never thought about playing otherwise. Word of mouth is not dead. It is stronger than ever, and it kind of manifests in that way. Also, it keeps you playing a game that you wouldn't otherwise play sometimes. I'm not good at Valorant by any means, but I definitely played way more of it than I had any right to, because that's just what my friends played at the time, and I just wanted to hang out with them. And it's just sometimes with friend groups, you kind of need that facilitator activity, you need that shared thing that you're doing together. So games are really good for that. But I think what's probably most important to me about friendship in games is it deepens your bonds with people, and also with the game itself. I think everybody who's had a great Jackbox night or remembers playing Smash Bros or Halo as a kid remembers those times really fondly, and you sort of develop this really deep fondness for those games just because you had that great experience that you shared with other people. You start referencing moments from the game or in jokes from your time playing, and it becomes this sort of shared language, and that really helps cement friendships and appreciate that game on a deeper level than you don't get playing alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, sometimes like people even go on to like create these like big, strong communities, like the Smash community, like, and then they take this game that they play with their friends as kids and then turn it into a career of playing games with friends. And it's just like the entire basis for their livelihood, which is this really special thing that games can provide now. So yeah, just like so many different ways.
For sure. You talk about those shared stories, those in-jokes, those moments that happen in a game that forge friendships. It kind of makes me think in my head back to tabletop stuff that I experienced growing up. Do you play a lot of tabletop? Have you played a lot of tabletop?
Yeah, I have an ongoing D&D session. I'm a green halfling named Pickle Bill,
Nice.
who wields a rusty pipe. Yeah, like I tabletop is another one that, like, video games aside, like games in general is just like a great way to like create really stupid moments, really stupid characters with friends, and like just enjoy that absurdity and spontaneity. That's the kind of thing that I go towards.
It sounds universal. Like I have a million stories like that, and everybody I talk to who plays games, it's the same. I think it's baked right in, which kind of leads us into the next part of this is, can you think of ways that games have mechanics? Are there actual mechanics that can be built into a game to encourage collaboration, friendship, creation of bonds?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky because like when you're making a game, it's easy to put it in the perspective of just one player, like you're thinking of the player.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to think about all the different people that are bringing their own desires and their own biases into the equation and how those all interact, especially for like a group game. And like in today's world, because we're often playing games like scattered across different geographies, which is like the case with a lot of us playing online, especially after the pandemic and during. So a lot of consideration goes into like this remote experience, the experience that you get when you like queue up with a game of total strangers. Like, how do we keep things civil for the first part, and then also engender friendship? And you think the answer is like, well, like if you give people more communication tools, it might be better. But like I found that that's kind of rarely the case. I think we can talk about this later, but like it's a really way to open like the door, a really easy way to open the door for like people to act not on their best behavior, because they have that separation of the screen and the anonymity of being online and all that.
Yeah,
I think we can look to like a couple maybe like positive role models. I think Nintendo's actually done this well at times. Pokemon has this really like positive collaborative aspect that's like baked into mechanics of like trading and collecting.
Yeah.
It gives you like a purpose as an individual player and a common goal that you share with other players because you want to show off your collection and grow it together, and you need those other people to do it. And never mind all the cynical aspects of why that exists, but I think there is a positive there, and also offers this pretense for people to get out and play with people together outside of the game, like talking about like, can I share with you, or in the case of like Pokemon Go, like, are you going to go do this raid with me, sort of thing. Then you can turn, like that friend's list name into like a real friend. I think Pokemon does that. I used to play a lot of Pokemon competitively as a youngster. I wasn't very good, I did. And I sort of had that experience. And speaking of the competitive side, there is like a competitive side, but it's like a one-on-one fight. So there's like a lot of like guardrails on toxic behavior. I mean, you can never totally like get rid of it, but you can't whine about teammates, and like any decision that you make is your own fault. I mean, you can complain about the meta and whatever, but you also have access to all the same tools that other players do. So it kind of defangs your arguments a little bit when you do that. And then speaking of competitive things, I also like play TFT, which is Riot's competitive like auto battler. At like the master level, when I'm like ignoring all my real responsibilities and grinding it. And I found through that experience, like it's like a whole lot easier to make friends in that game than in League of Legends, because it's also a solo game because it's you versus others. There's like 7 other people that you're playing in the same with, and like sometimes players can like brief you, which we'll talk about later, but they can like hold your units and like brief your position. But generally, anything that happens in the game is either your fault or RNG's fault. So you don't always end up blowing up at other players. And then I think that kind of creates like this like community aspect where people are like sharing knowledge and trying to optimize their play and get better together. So it also like just creates this like fun experience. I mean, I know that's kind of like a TFT tangent, but I think like the main thing I'm trying to say is like, I think if you have the shared goal and you create these experiences that put those guardrails on toxic behavior, that it only leaves room for the positives. And that's extremely hard to do. And some games don't always offer that because a lot of the mechanics are baked into those mechanics are relying on your teammates. And I feel like whenever something goes wrong and you like in a Overwatch or like in a League of Legends where like something goes wrong, we can always find a teammate to blame, even if it's your fault. So there's nothing you can really do about that at the end of the day, but you can kind of keep that in mind. And if you want to create a game that's like built on fostering friendships, I think that you can choose the positive things out of that and then decide if you want to venture into that sort of other realm of competitive cooperative games.
That's smart. I think you're bang on the shared goal, and then the idea of uncommon commonalities, the things that you can talk about outside and inside the game. That's a shared language of talking about elemental types and Pokemon and what beats what and all that. But you did touch on earlier about the whole idea of those shared moments. Like,
yeah,
I have friends that I built playing WoW that were at the ringing of the gong when Uncharted opened up, like those moments that are like touchstones in a game. Is that something else we should consider as a, like, not so much a mechanic as just something that you need to keep an eye on if you want to build those friendships in a game?
Yeah, I think that might fall under like a community aspect because of course that's an in-game event, but it's really tied with a schedule thing that I would think a community manager would work closely with the dev team on for like a sort of like live service game. As far as like a core mechanic, I would say that maybe that's not mechanics, but yeah, like I think what you're saying, creating opportunities to have shared moments should be a consideration if you're trying to build a community for sure. I think you really nailed that. Yeah,
you're probably right. That is more community than friendship, where it's more about one-on-one thing. You're right. Look at us, back and forth.
We're figuring it out.
Let's put a pin in the friendship one. I think you nailed her there. I think that's the key. So the next lens is expression. What role, in your opinion, does player expression play in shaping that gaming community?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what expression is, it's like how we communicate to the world who we are, which, whether or not you're conscious of it, it's kind of like a really important fundamental thing for all of us. Obviously, like you can express yourself through like cosmetics, which I think is kind of self-explanatory. Yeah. But there's a lot of like interesting ways that you can express yourself through like things like mechanics, like the kind of characters you play. For example, when I play Overwatch, I play a lot of Wrecking Ball. And we were talking about this earlier, but a Wrecking Ball is this character that has this really unique play style where you kind of lead your team for a little bit. You disrupt the enemy team, and generally that's supposed to help them. But if you do it too early, or if your team's not really understanding what you're doing because you're acting a little bit different than the other tanks in the game, they might start to complain about you. And I've felt this sort of stigma playing Wrecking Ball. And this is all down to just like the mechanics of the player of the character that like balloon into this community feeling. And I'm just wanting to express myself as a player. I feel like this is like, oh, I really love doing this. I really love being this character. But being this character also gives you this identity that the community recognizes. So, I mean, to get back to your original question, I think expression is really wrapped up in identity. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like really core to what games kind of uniquely offer. Because like you get this idea, this ability to play out different roles and like through that learn about yourself and other people. So I think the tools available to players to express themselves and the sort of like ways they express themselves are something that developers should keep in mind and think about in the future the implications of, because either the way that the game functions or with these certain character functions character's function can create this attitude among the community. Yeah. I think I've answered that question.
I think you have to. I don't think it was it's something that evolved over time. The roles, the tank, DPS, healer, support, the roles in a lot of games. But you're right; those roles have become part of people's personalities. A person, if you ask them, what do you main in this game, you probably have a pretty good idea of what they play in other games. Then, if somebody's for instance, you play, it's Hammy, isn't it? The hamster that's a wrecking.
Yeah.
Hammy.
His name is Hammy. His name is Wrecking Ball, but that's his code name. His real name is Hammond, but yeah, they call me there. Or just Ball. So now you got a ball on our team.
I'm guessing you probably tend towards more tank characters as well. Like, is that becomes part of your identity? You're the person who's out in front helping people and standing in between danger and your friends. That's part of your identity.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. But also, if you're going to bring tabletop into it, I feel like sometimes when I play tabletop, this isn't exactly tabletop, but like when I play Baldur's Gate, for example, when I play a sorcerer, and I play tanks in all of the games where I'm like playing live. But when I have turn-based and have an opportunity to think about my positioning a little bit better in my strategy, I tend to take a backline role. And I think that there's something there where it's like your identity shifts based on your capacity as a player. For example, like when I'm playing this type of like Overwatch or League of Legends or something, and it's like my lizard brain kicks in and I have to go in, like I have to have the tools to be able to get out safely or like make my going in worth it. So yeah, it's just different. The different mechanics can like really lead you to having different identities in different situations, which is like really odd and cool about games.
Yeah. So as a developer or a designer, then it's probably smart to be aware of the fact that if you're trying to give players a chance to express themselves, or at least being aware that they're going to express themselves, keep in mind what the roles are, if there's roles in your games, or what slots you're creating for people to fit themselves in and express themselves. That's one way to view this lens.
Yeah, and there's so many other ways to view expression. A lot of ways that I am not qualified to talk about, but that's just kind of the way that I interpreted that question.
I like that. Well, just to riff off it before we move on to another lens, can you think of other ways that you've seen games allow people to express themselves that was interesting?
I have a recent example of the way that a game didn't allow me to express myself. Yeah, I felt a little restricted. I recently, because of all the hype around the final shape, I downloaded Destiny, and I was in the Destiny 2, and I was at the character creator, and there was like 4 or 5 different faces. There's a handful of faces, and like I didn't like any of them for me, but you can't really do anything about that. And then like the game is like, okay, you have your armor on all the time, and you're expressing yourself through the armor and the cosmetics, but like I was like, I felt, I mean, I still played it, but I felt a little bit less excited to jump in because I didn't feel like I had that like character that I was proud of.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of lends itself to like this idea of when we're expressing ourselves and we're thinking about it in that way, like we have to have a lot of tools to be able to do that because we have so many different people playing games. We all think and act different. We all look different, and we all want to show this like best version of ourselves to the world. And it's really awkward when you're representing a face or an avatar or a play style that doesn't like really represent you. So I think the best things that devs can do is like really learn about their players, like listen to them, interact with them, get to know them, hire people like them, and then represent that in the game. And I know that's like a lot of research and a lot of work and a lot of like assets you're creating. But if you want to, create, if you especially if you have the budget to, and you want to create this like ongoing community and ecosystem, those are like really important things to keep in mind.
I swear I saw somewhere that Destiny 2, they were bringing more options to the character creation and customization, but I guess it's not in yet. I haven't had a chance to get into Final Shape yet. So I need to find some time.
No, yeah, I would just play in the base version of the game. I don't know if I'm going to drop the money in the Final Shape yet. My shape is in flux right now.
Not final. I get it. Okay. Right. That was well done. All right. That's the lens of expression. And there's, again, all of these lenses, when I have these conversations with folks like yourself, we touch on each one, but every one of these lenses, you really could go into an hour-long conversation about each lens. But we're just talking about our experiences and viewpoints here.
Yeah, when I was like thinking about my answers to the lenses, when you sent the ones we're going to talk about to me, I was like, I could talk about each one of these for like 5 hours. I really need to pick a lane and go down it. So yeah. If my answer's a little narrow, that's why.
But we're just here to talk about topical topics that apply to it and a point of view on each of these lenses. Shell Games does a great job of talking about them much more in depth. People grab the book, grab the deck, grab the app, but let's move on. The lens of community. So this is kind of the big arching one that pulls them all together for me here. In your opinion, what defines a strong community, a strong gaming community? And with that knowledge, how can they be cultivated?
I think a strong community, it comes from the game. It comes from the top down. Our community is built on a strong game, a game that is like has that X factor that people love. And I think we saw a really good example of a strong community recently with Helldivers too. Like it was like it wasn't on my radar. Like it was to me like a very little known game, but like they had that X factor. And as soon as it came out, it blew up and people started loving it. The community management was really good. Like they were really in universe doing that kind of like Starship Troopers, jokey, meme sort of posting. And people were rallying around that game. I think they're just like, all sharing and the good vibes. And then the Sony debacle happened where they're like, hey, you need to link your PSN account or whatever to the game in order to keep playing on PC. And they just instant loss of like trust and respect among everyone, and it just swung around. And I think like that's kind of example of what not to do, or realizing that like trust is so easily lost. Like you can build the strongest community possible, but if you do something like you'll still have diehard players, just still have people who will champion the game, but you'll lose that momentum instantly. And I think things have kind of gotten better for them, but it's definitely not like, with the natural decay of like hype cycles and whatever, and that incident, I think it's kind of not as it was. But if you're representing your players and you're thinking about your players, kind of what I said earlier about what you should do for communities, I think like it's kind of like keeping that in mind. And like if they had, thought, hey, if we make this decision, we're going to lose our community. Somebody should have listened to that. I'm sure someone said that, but someone should listen to that. And that's where you can go wrong. Yeah.
I think you're bang on that the key is knowing your player base, knowing the player fantasy. If you want to go back to the stack, I mean, knowing this is the players, this is what they, me too. This is what they want. Like when I think of strong communities, I think of like Eve Online. The community there is like insanely tight, but Eve, they know their players, they know what they want, they give it to them, they hold conventions for them, they have dedicated activities for these people, so that the community is tight as heck. And then you have, on the other hand, Hasbro and what's happened with D&D over the last 12 months, and one fall down after another because the people in charge didn't really know their players as well as the people who used to be in charge do them. So it's all about knowing those players.
And like they have a really good product. Obviously, tabletop gaming is stronger than it's ever been. D&D, Baldur's Gate, like all these things are in the zeitgeist for sure. But it takes that loss of trust, and then people start making their own versions, and they start coming up with alternatives, and it's like they start capitalizing on the fact that you have lost trust with your community, but they know what the community wants, and you seem to have lost sight of it. So, not saying that I can't really speak to what Hasbro knows or doesn't know, or Wizards knows or doesn't know, but like that's just kind of like an example of like, that the sort of trust loss thing that happens.
So building that community, a lot of that takes place online, obviously. In your opinion, what part does online forums, social media, things like Discord, because you are a Discord mod,
Yeah.
what part do those play in playing a community? How are they a powerful tool, but also how are they a problem sometimes, maybe?
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of tribalism that goes on with like social media, maybe a lot of it of tribalism, but I think like for one thing, I was saying earlier about like shared language and stuff like that. Like the community has like these like shared memes and shared like, things like that. Like they all kind of sort of talk and think in a certain way. It feels kind of like a hive mind at times for certain communities. And that could be, that can be positive if you want community and you don't mind succumbing to the hive mind, or you don't find it too cringy, or you don't, you feel like you identify with the way the community is going. And it's a good thing for the game because like, it just continues. Hype cycles are able to continue. Like if you're investing in new content and you keep creating new content, like the final shape, and your community is not into it, or they're not there anymore, then, you're going to totally lose out. And it's good for people too, because like, they're passionate and they want to talk about the things they love. But I think like it's also important for them to like feel safe and accepted when they do it. Mm-hmm. So you really want to like make sure that you like cultivate that feeling of safety and like nip problems in the bud, because the flip side of that is there's toxic communities that arise. Like, I hate to keep very League of Legends, but it's like the thing that I know people see it as a really toxic community, and it is sometimes. Like a lot of the time, like you look at the most famous streamers of League of Legends, they're all screaming at their computers, their teammates. Like it's just, and that's kind of a hard thing to move away from. Like once a community is like branded as like toxic, then nobody wants to go near it, or they'll be discouraged from going near it, and then you really lose out on growth. And I think if you want to create like a strong community, I think transparency goes a long way as well. Like I think Larian recently did this. They had I think it was a PS5 version pre-orders, and they were running into like problems with the factory, and like people would normally be so upset about this, and I'm sure they're upset about it, but the way that they like handled that, they were like, hey, we are sorry, we didn't mean to do this, it was a manufacturing thing. And I think just saying sorry sometimes, and we're trying our best, can go a long way.
Yeah,
if it's believable. I mean, it might make your legal team a little bit antsy, but yeah, I think like it goes back to like trust again, and like trusting that, like it's trust and safety, I guess, because like as a member of community, you want to feel safe, and you also want to trust the person or the game or the company who is creating this community and willing it into your being.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the final shape, because Destiny has a community that is well known to be very polarized. There's a very toxic element to it of like passionate players where if something goes wrong for a season or something, they're very vocal and very toxic. But then there's also Destiny players like Dr. Lupo and King Cathalion who have done a lot of good and are very positive forces out there. So it's interesting that you bring that one up, because it's an excellent case. And coming into Final Shape, everybody's like holding their breath, or like, okay, is this going to bring back the light? Because it's been kind of dark for a while. So it's a good case study in the whole idea of community around online forums.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really familiar with that community, but that makes a total sense. Like you can really have two polar ends of a community, and sometimes they like don't interact, but it's also sometimes it's like hard when that polar aspect, the polar negative aspect exists, and you want to be proud of your community, but you're like, okay, but I'm not that. So I mean, sometimes it just comes with the territory, but it's hard as a player to have to explain yourself every time you try to express yourself as a community member.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it falls on the devs to just try and provide as much tools, and on the company as a whole to just try and create like you're saying, a safe community, a safe space.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, that kind of does lead into the last one, the lens of griefing. So before we jump into this one, why don't you give me your definition of the word griefing? What kind of experience have you had with griefers?
Yeah, I mean, I think like griefing is like this weird phenomena where like you want to lose because it caused your teammates pain, or you want to like lose or make your game worse because messing with someone else is the source of like power and control for you. Like it's like tantamount to bullying that you like you can like target just one specific player, and for whatever reason, like a lot of the time it's because of you had a rough day, or like you are playing bad but you want to play with someone else, and like you want to spend your time making the entire match hell because of what you're bringing to the table. So that's what I would say is griefing. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I think of the first time I really ran into a griefer, it was vanilla WoW, like way back just after beta, like it just gone public, and I was doing a quest at like level 30, and a level 50 guy was there killing the NPC out. The quest turned an NPC off, and he's sat there for hours. Like, it's like, don't you have a life? Is there nothing you could be doing better than sitting here killing an NPC? And there's like 20 of us low level guys waiting to talk to this NPC, and I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why do people do this? But there it is. Okay, so using the lens of griefing, applying it to game design, what challenges arise from dealing with this griefing behavior in online gaming communities?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of challenges. Like if you have griefers in your game, one, I mean, just on a basic level, as a developer, you need to then create like some sort of moderation system. You need to create tools to like identify and get rid of griefers. But then, sometimes those don't work. Sometimes the solution is controversial and kernel level. Sometimes the solution is, within the case of cheaters. And sometimes like, I think there's a lot of sticky stuff because like sometimes people just have bad games, and it's hard to identify like if someone's griefing or if they're just not doing well in the game, if they deserve to be punished or not. If punishing will even help. Sometimes punishing people does not help. Yeah. Sometimes they have a million accounts and they just go on to their next one. It creates so many problems. And like for the players who aren't griefing, obviously they just go in to try their best. Like especially in a competitive team game, it's like especially in your ranked as well, like every game you go into and a griefer loses you the game, it's not your fault. You lost progress, and what do you do? Like you just have to eat it and move on. Like no one likes to just eat that and move on. So yeah.
Gotcha. So really, I mean, apart from programming and mechanical tools to help fight off the worst of it, it's really more of a social engineering of building a healthy community again where those people don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, social engineering is the word there for sure.
There's some games, this could be just my opinion, but there are some games where griefing is almost part of the game. Like I think of Escape from Tarkov. Griefing almost feels like it's part of the game, like it's intentionally in there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know too much about Escape from Tarkov. I feel like does this griefing other players sort of get you an advantage? Are you against other players?
Because of the nature of it, how sandboxy it is, how you can kill anybody, take all their loot. They're just there's nothing they can do about it. If you like, you could sit down and play a 45-minute run where you go in, play clean, have a good time, you're sniping, you're playing clean, you're about to leave, and there's a guy just camping the exfil, and he's just sitting there with a pistol. He's got no risk at all, and he shoots you and takes 45 minutes worth of work at the last minute. And that's just part of the game. Like that really is.
Yeah.
It's griefing, but it is also Tarkov. That's the Tarkov experience.
I guess I don't know. That feels like griefing, but that player that did that is not on your team. Like it's their incentive to do that. So I do think that it's probably more in the category of like degenerate behavior and that's still not good. It's adjacent to grieving, and I think that the same sort of tools that would curb grieving would also curb that sort of degen behavior. But yeah, the effects are still there, where it's just like, I don't really know what else I could have done. I played out of my mind and was punished by the wrath of God. It feels like, and that's it. So yeah, it feels bad as a player.
I guess part of me wonders, games like that, do they self-select who's going to stay and play? And therefore, the game is made for a community of people who like to play that way. So they're having a good time. That's their player fantasy. They want that experience, even though sometimes it sucks hell. But that's...
Yeah, I think there's like like you said, like kind of like a natural selection sort of thing that goes on. Yeah. And if you look at your community, sometimes you can look at the game and be like, okay, this game created this community. Like this, like the game that allows this to happen naturally weeds out certain players and boosts others. So yeah. Sometimes from a fundamental level, it does happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, let's wrap up this whole lens conversation. I guess let's bring it all together. In your opinion, again, how do these 4 lenses collectively shape the relationship between community and competition in a digital game?
Yeah, I mean, like people make the game, and games make the people, makes the community. Like, that can be hard to like remember when you're playing, but like behind the avatars and the controllers, there's like a full 3-dimensional person there, and you're only like seeing a narrow slice of them when you jump into a game, especially a competitive game. And games can let us see like more of like the beautiful sides of people, and like make friends and lasting bonds, and make the games better. And then on the flip side of that, you can have griefers and degens and all these things that we talked about that are bad for the game. And I think that like if we, as developers, we have to be cognizant of like so many implications and so many things, and it's a lot to do. But if you're able to promote friendship and expression and community and curb things like griefing, I think that makes for a healthy game. And even like from a strictly cynical perspective, like a money perspective, it's a good idea to do that, because, a healthy game will continue to thrive, continue to have a good community, continue to make you money. But also, like, it should just feel good to make a good game that people love,
Preach.
So about it.
You're wise, my friend. I like that you mentioned beautiful communities, because I was talking to our mutual friend today about his favorite game, which is Final Fantasy 14, whatever the online one that everybody plays. Yeah. I was mentioning how 2 of my friends met and got married because they met on there. And apparently that's a common occurrence in that community, as people become romantically involved with people they play with. Like, it's so obviously it's a community.
And that's great, right? Like I should not play that game. I did not need to lose all those hours of my life, but I really think that's great that like, and it is something that like games can do. And I know that like Final Fantasy 14 also offers a lot of like avenues for expression. I mean, you can be a cat boy in it, so like, what's more do you need? But like, yeah, there's just like there's so many good sides to games that we can kind of like tease out, and I really like. I think you and I both agree that we should do that more. For sure.
Amen. What's your favorite community? What's your favorite game? Because you talked about the different communities you're parts of, like Overwatch 2 and the Riot one.
Yeah. I think, I'm not a part of a ton of communities. I really fall in and out of different games because I start playing them for a while. I get really into them. Like, why am I doing this every day? Because like I need to expand my horizons and I need to do things that will help my career. Playing this game every day is not one of them. But despite everything I just said, I play way too much TFT, and I talked about it earlier, but I think the TFT community is like really, I think it's really one of the more positive communities I've been a part of. Like, I even got I got the chance to like run into one of like the most popular like TFT streamers at GDC recently. He was just there. I think he works for marketing for a game company. He was just the nicest guy, and I feel like what you experienced with T&D I always say I feel that T&D is like the nicest group of like game writers in the business. I feel like there's a certain sort of aura you can get from just like talking to somebody from that community. It's like, okay, I don't know what it is, but this community has produced a bunch of these kind of people, and I all vibe with them. So yeah, I think there's some sort of like magic there happening. I've sort of found it with the TFT community. I think, yeah.
All right, we're gonna put the lenses behind us and start heading for the door. But first, I like to ask a question. Everybody that comes on the podcast, I'm sure you've probably heard this question before. And the question is, in my opinion, there is a magical space that exists at the intersection of obviously story and game, but improv, comedy, acting, playwrights, board games, comic books, all of this, where we can all just get together, shared language, hang out naturally. If you agree with my theory, what is the magical thread that holds all this together?
Yeah, so I think there's like a simple, maybe boring answer to that, in that like imagination is useful, right? Like from a primitive caveman hunter sense, we imagine ourselves fighting the lion, and then we sort of train ourselves to get better at fighting the lion without actually fighting the lion. But there's something like magical even there. Like when we imagine fighting the lion, we're doing a sort of role playing, and we're becoming a person, the type of person who fights lions. And it gives us a chance to say, hey, I thought about it, and I don't really think I'm cut out to be a lion fighter. Or maybe you are. I don't know. I'm just going to go pick some areas instead or whatever. So to bring it to like the modern day, I think like fictional stories, whether they be like games or like books or movies or whatever, there's like, it creates this sort of like safe haven for imagination where we're sort of like free to step into these different roles and try them on for size. And then report back when we get back to the real world, our findings, like, do we accept these roles? Do we not? Or do we accept only parts of them? And then the things that we like play out in our heads or through the process of like play begins to define like who we are as people. And it also gives us a chance to really like understand other perspectives as well. Playing games that you never would have played, or from a point of view that you or a life experience that you don't hold, and you just walking in other people's shoes in a way that you would never be able to do normally, and gives a sense for how other people see the world.
I love that answer, dude. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
There's actually a follow-up question that I don't ask all the time. In fact, I don't ask it very often anymore, but you kind of wandered into it, so I'm going to snap the trap here. Considering that you're touching on the fact that story and game are evolutionary tools that our species has used to evolve over time, and how they're being used today and the state of humanity as it is, what burden does that put on people who are creating games or stories? What responsibility do we bear because the things we're creating are so powerful?
That's really, I think we touched on it a little bit throughout the course of this conversation, but there's a lot of burden, a lot of debt that gets put on developers and people who are trying to be creative in making sure that there's space for everyone to be themselves. And I think that's important, but there's also a lot of selves that people can be. So I think if you want to create the best art, you have to really go out there. They say write what you know. You have to really go out there and experience things and really get a sense for what is real and realize that your perspective might be limited. Because if you say, like, if you're making a character creator and you can only do male or female, you're invalidating so many different people who may not feel, like they fit in those categories. And if you're blind to that, if you're ignorant to that, then you'll create art that does not reflect the totality and the beauty of the way that people can express themselves and be and are every day that you might not be seeing.
There it is. That one answer is the whole reason I wanted you on the show, dude. Wise beyond your years. I love it. That's great. All right, enough serious stuff. We're going to head for the door here. Before we go, I have a quick fire I like to do just to get to know you a little bit better. Top of the mind, don't go too deep on these. What are you reading right now?
Somebody recently suggested I read Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. I never heard of it, but it looks like a cool series, sci-fi series. I'm down.
Right on.
I'm going to try it out.
There you go. What are you playing right now?
I am playing a lot of Unreal Engine. So trying to learn it more than I am. But yeah, and Destiny and
Nice.
Baldur's Gate and all these things. a lot at once.
Quick tangent. What resource are you using to learn Unreal? Because I'm doing the LinkedIn Learning Unreal program.
Oh, really? I didn't know that there was.
It's scattered all over the place, and I'm taking it more for using to create content for marketing, for like visualization of internal spaces and stuff. But I'll use it for games too. But
yeah. Well, our good friend Mario has not Mario the Plumber, Mario Gogola has this really. He went through and he did BioShock. Not BioShock, sorry, a BioWare game, Mass Effect.
Mass Effect.
He did Mass Effect. He did a quest exploration of Mass Effect, and he put out a video about how to do that. I thought that was really cool, and I just want to copy him basically. So I'm gonna go do that. Yeah, if I find the other tutorials, I'll send them your way.
Cool. Yeah, let's share back and forth. All right, last fun one, and then we're gonna start heading for the door here. If your essence was boiled down perfectly and translated into a game, and this could be video game, tabletop, board game, whatever, what system or world would it be, and what race or class would you be?
I think it would be like the Wind Waker plus the size and scope of Elden Ring plus the world and play style of Bloodborne plus there's a working arcade machine in the game where you can just play Star Fox 64 in its entirety. Also, you can skateboard. Probably. that would be my entire essence.
There you go. That's very cool. All right, man. Before we head out the door here, I like to open a little space up. Is there something you're working on or recently have worked on that you want to boost, signal boost, promote?
Last thing I worked on was a game that was like, what if Ratatouille was a necromancer? It was a little demo, but it's fun if you're interested. And then I'm working on the small loan stuff. And I also have this project I'm mulling around that's like, if Stanley Parable was in a casino and also on steroids. So we'll see what comes of that. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, you mentioned that one before earlier, and yeah, that's cool. I like that concept a lot. I didn't want to jump in during that conversation, but that one's right up my alley. Like that, it's cool.
Well, yeah, I'll have to keep you posted on it.
Please.
Sure.
But people want to find you online, what's the best place to look?
I mean, LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. We'll put the link in the doobly-doo.
I do. Yep.
And go from there.
Right on. Okay, brother. We're going to head out the door, but I want to give you the last word. Any parting words of wisdom before I kick you out into the cold?
Well, I guess it's a little cheesy, maybe. But as game designers, we always hear about like embracing iteration. And I guess I would invite everybody to kind of embrace iteration in all areas of life and not just in games or in work. Because, you know, in order to grow, you have to be better than you were yesterday. And if you're worried about like failing or making something that's not good enough, like there's always a chance to make it better. There's always a chance to improve. And that's just how improvement works, is you have to do the thing first in order to get better at it. Which I guess is kind of just like taking and stealing the like growth mindset and like putting a gamer skin on it. And I guess also like the fail faster mindset. And then I guess the great artists like steal mindset. So I guess what I'm saying is if you want to grow, you should fail and steal.
The veils between realms thins once more, and it draws close to time for my tavern to move on to the next plane. But before I go, thank you once again to Stephen for sitting down and sharing your insights. And to you, dear listener, thank you for taking your seat at the table. Until we meet again, remember, keep exploring, creating, and sharing your stories with the world. Stay safe out there, Wanderer. Your chair will be ready by the fire the next time you stop in at the corner of story and game.